Assalamualaikum and hello everybody. I am Madam Yusnaliza. Today our topic is Malaysian Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting. Let's look at the topic outcome. This is the topic outcome. There are altogether 9 topic outcomes. And the topic outcome will enable you to achieve the objectives of understanding the conceptual framework for financial reporting. Let's start by introducing the Malaysian conceptual framework for financial reporting. Why do we need a conceptual framework? Just some background. Financial statements, as you know, which is the result of the financial reporting, are prepared and presented for both internal and external users by many entities around the world. And these financial reports are based on estimates, judgments, and models rather than exact depiction. Therefore, there is a need for conceptual framework which will establish the concept that underlie those estimates, judgment, and models. And what is a conceptual framework actually? Conceptual framework is defined as a structured system of interrelated objectives, fundamental characteristics, and concepts which leads to the development of high quality and consistent reporting standards. Consistent reporting standards here refers to Malaysia, it is the MFRS, but if you're talking about the international standards, this refers to the IFRS and the IAS, right? And those standards are the one that will prescribe how we prepare the financial statement. However, the conceptual framework is the one that will prescribe the nature, functions, and limits of the financial accounting and reporting, and shall refer to the textbooks, chapter 2, page 29 for the so-called definition. Let's take a look at the background of the Malaysian Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting. This will show you what was the attempt done within the context of Malaysian in its effort to develop the Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting. As a start, let me inform you that the Malaysian Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting was actually the IASB Conceptual Framework that was issued for Malaysian use, right? For Malaysian use. And the attempt by Malaysia was done by somehow by MASB. MASB is the Malaysian Accounting Standards Board, which is the local standard setter in Malaysia. So in 1998, the discussion paper entitled Framework for the Preparation and Presentation of Financial Statements was issued, right? And then there was actually an attempt to set a foundation for the manner in which financial statements should be prepared and presented. What happened next is that in July 2007, the discussion paper 1, which is the framework in 1998, the discussion paper, is now being finalized as the MASB framework for the preparation and presentation of financial statement. Do take note that at this point, the word here is financial statement, which is the result of the financial reporting. And later on, in November 2011, the Malaysian Accounting Standards Board, or the MASB as an acronym, issued a new version of the Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting. Here you can see that the word financial statements is now being replaced with the word financial reporting. And the Conceptual Framework at somewhere in 2011 was not yet a complete project. Some of the chapters were still missing. For your information, now there are altogether 8 chapters in the Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting. The one in 2011 was not yet a complete project. So the conceptual framework is applicable for the preparation and presentation of financial statement in accordance with the Malaysian Financial Reporting Standards. And the Malaysian Financial Reporting Standards is a word for word the same as the International Financial Reporting Standards. So this is in respect, it is in compliance with the International Financial Reporting Standards. So does the Malaysian Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting. Next, in April 2018, the Malaysian Accounting Standards Board, the standard setter in Malaysia, issued a revised conceptual framework for financial reporting. And the revised framework is called the MASB Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting, and it is respectively equivalent to the Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting that was earlier issued by the International Accounting Standards Board, the IASB, in March 2018. And now, this is a complete project and it contains 8 chapters altogether. These are some of the reasons that were put forward to develop an accounting conceptual framework. That is to identify the foundation for financial reporting and the objectives of a financial statement, to identify the qualitative characteristics of financial information, to provide a basis for setting high quality and consistent reporting standards, and also to serve as a reference point. That was the reason that we need to develop a conceptual framework, reference points for resolving accounting issues and disputes. These are actually the purpose of the conceptual framework that was issued. In Malaysia, it was issued by the Malaysian Accounting Standards Board. And remember, it is word for word, which is respectively equivalent to the IASB Conceptual Framework. And you'll find that the objectives of the conceptual framework, or the purpose actually of the conceptual framework here, is the same as those of the IASB, with some word being used here to actually replicate the use in Malaysia. Number 1 is to assist the board. The board in Malaysia is the MASB, where internationally that was IASB, International Accounting Standards Board. But since this is looking at the Malaysian perspective, the board refers to the standard setter, the Malaysian Accounting Standards Board, to develop MFRS standards. So it will assist the MASB to develop MFRS standards. And again, MFRS is word for word the same as the International Financial Reporting Standards. And this will be referred to as the standards, which are based on the consistent concept. The consistent concepts here refers to the conceptual framework. We'll look into detail what are the content of the conceptual framework. It will also assist preparers. Preparers here, the duty to prepare the financial statements are delegated to the accountants. However, legal responsibility are the responsibility of the management or the so-called board of directors. So it will assist them to develop consistent accounting policies when there is no standard applies to a particular transaction or other event, or when a standard allows a choice of accounting policies. Certain standards, like for example MFRS 116, it allows a choice of accounting policy on subsequent measurement. So it's actually up to the company to decide whether to use the cost model or the revaluation model. Or when there is no standard which has provided guidance to certain particular transaction or other events. We can also refer to the conceptual framework to have a guidance on what would be the best way to decide. Next is to assist all parties, all other parties. For example, the users of financial statement, the users can either be lenders, the creditors, the existing shareholders, or the general public, to understand and interpret the standards. And therefore, the formulation of a coherent set of financial reporting standard, what we call the rules or the law in accounting, the so-called rules or law, should build on and relate to an established body of concept. And that established body of concept is a soundly developed conceptual IASB framework if it's internationally, and in Malaysia, as I said, that was the MASB framework. And the conceptual framework is the so-called constitution. And these are the purpose of the IASB conceptual framework that were in the IFRS website, and it was from the IFRS presentation, and that addresses some of these fundamental issues, where it will answer the question what is the objectives of financial reporting, what makes financial information useful, and those items that relates to asset, liabilities, equity, expenses, and when should they be recognized, or how should they be measured, presented, and disclosed. So conceptual framework will be a practical tool to help the board, the preparers, and the parties that are interested to understand and interpret the standards. For the preparers, it was to develop the consistent accounting policies, and for the board, which is like let's say in Malaysia, IASB, and is the one that give the impact to the Malaysian Accounting Standards Board to develop the standards for local use and all of international compliance as well. And these are the status and purpose of the conceptual framework. For a start, conceptual framework is not a standard. Nothing in the conceptual framework will override any of the standard or any requirement in a standard. If there are conflict between conceptual framework and a standard, the requirement of the MFRS or the IFRS, or in general the requirement of the standard, shall prevail over those of the conceptual framework. If this happens, the MASB will have to explain the departure in the basis for conclusions on that particular standard. The conceptual framework may also be revised from time to time, but the revision will not automatically lead to the changes to the accounting standards. So revision will not mean that the accounting standards will need to be also being a change. Any decision to amend any particular standard would require the standard setter, which is the board, to go through its due process for adding a project to its agenda and develop an amendment to that standard. Conceptual framework has actually a noble intention to contribute to the stated mission of the standard setting board. That mission is to develop standards that bring transparency, accountability, and efficiency to financial market. The conceptual framework, which is the MASB conceptual framework, provides foundation for developing standards that are going to contribute to transparency. How? By enhancing the international comparability and quality of the financial information, and also helping investors to make an informed economic decision, helps to strengthen the accountability by reducing the information gap between the providers of the capital and people to whom they have entrusted their money, meaning that the resources that were actually provided by the users of the financial statement to the company, now it has a standard that are based on the conceptual framework that will somehow provide information that will hold the management to be accountable. And that is also going to provide foundation that will contribute to the economic efficiency by helping investors as well as also businesses. And at the same time, it will lower the cost of capital and reduces international reporting costs. These are the scope of the conceptual framework, which can be found in the document International IASB Conceptual Framework or the Malaysian Conceptual Framework for Financial Reporting. In the content section, there are 8 chapters. It is actually the structure of the conceptual framework or the component of the conceptual framework that are divided into 8 chapters. These are the chapters involved. We'll be looking into the chapters. In our next video, we'll be looking into chapter 1 of the framework, and last video we'll be looking at the chapter 8 of the conceptual framework. That's it. Brilliant. You just finished the introduction. I will see you in the next video. I thank you for watching, and Assalamualaikum, and have a pleasant day ahead.